as a reminder, this is an ancient curriculum that was established around 7th, 8th century, but most likely was around long before that and existed probably in the, or I should say, appeared in the ancient Viharas, which were practicing peace and liberation at a time where most of the world was having a lot of wars, imperial wars, and things like that, and power shifts, power changes, and the Dharma was always on the run. It seems like, but somehow it migrated up to Tibet during the heyday. I would say before the Tibetan Empire, but um, plugged itself into the Tarim Basin up there and was preserved. So we're very, very lucky to have this preservation. I would say this one right here by Thubten Nyima Rinpoche is a little bit more compact and a little bit more friendly than perhaps like Guru Rinpoche's Garland of Views, where he's very, very critical of the other vehicles. That's pretty much like a diss track. The Garland of Views he gets down in that text. So you can check it out. This one's a little bit more friendly and cohesive. And so, yeah, we've gone through the Shravaka Yana. That's the first, and the Pradyeka Buddha Yana, the second, which are considered paths of renunciation, worldly sort of paths, where they will try to push away desires and take vows not to have desires. And then there's the Bodhisattva Yana that piggybacks on that, but adds in the Bodhisattva vow, relative and absolute bodhicitta. And this is applicable to monastics and lay people alike. There are rich traditions of lay people as well, having realizations. Everybody from Buddha Shakyamuni to Tulku Organ Rinpoche have declared that lay people can reach complete freedom. This is just understated for some reason, and monastics are glamorized. So the Bodhisattva Yana is the third yana, of course, associated with Mahayana. And yeah, we made a video on that, so I don't really need to go over it too much. And then we went over Kriya, which introduces rituals like visualizations, deity practices, mantra recitations, purification practices like keeping the body clean, and all these kinds of things were introduced. And so we're on to the fourth, which is part of the three outer ascetic practices, but inner tantric yogas. So the vehicle of Charya Tantra. Oh, this is the fifth, yes, okay. The vehicle of Charya, or conduct Tantra, is so called because it places an equal emphasis on the outer actions of body and speech and the inner cultivation of samadhi. Now, I should say too, in the Bodhisattva Yana, you're sort of introduced to the bhumis, the 10 or the 11 bhumis, and all these enumerations. Whereas in the Shravaka Yana and the Pradyeka Buddha Yana, you're more following the jhanas. The jhanas are in the bhumis. I think third bhumi, if you're past the third bhumi, you've accomplished the jhanas. So all this ties together. It all weaves together, actually, quite nicely. And it says here, it is also called the Tantra of both, Upaya Tantra, because its view conforms with that of Yoga Tantra, while its conduct is similar to that of Kriya. So remember, Kriya came before this. And so the vehicle of Charya, they're basically saying, is in the middle between the Yoga Yana and the Kriya Yana. And Rinpoche says, I will now say a little about its entry point, view, meditation, conduct, and results. Entry point. One is matured by means of the 5 empowerments, which include the empowerments of the Vajra, bell, and name, in addition to the water and crown empowerments, and then maintains the samayas of Charya Tantra as described in the particular texts themselves. Now remember, every yana has a set of texts associated with it, scriptures, tantras, and sutras. The 5 empowerments are related to the 5 Buddha families. So this is a provisional. Remember, we saw in the last yana, they had the 3 Buddha families that were mentioned. And the 5 empowerments, of course, is related to the 5 Buddha families. So they're getting into this now. And typically you would have a ritual where the teacher has all kinds of paraphernalia, and Vajra and bell is included to represent skillful means and wisdom, the feminine and masculine aspects, where the bell is the wisdom and the feminine, and the Vajra is the masculine and skillful means, or compassion, as it's also known. That's the famous union that you see in all the tankas and the iconography. Wherever you see male and female in union, that's skillful means and wisdom in union. And then the child is body, speech, and mind, virtuous, or we could say enlightened body, speech, and mind, when those are in harmony. And then we can internally harmonize those too, but I won't go into that. But we typically have both of those within us, which can be harmonized, so to speak. So the view of this Charya Yoga is determined in the same way as the Yoga Tantra. So it will be explained below. And so that's the next yana. They're going to explain the view. Meditation. One visualizes oneself as the Samaya being. Oh, excuse me. I should also mention that you get Samayas after the empowerment. So there are several stages of the empowerment that the teacher would do. And then you take a Samaya to recite. Like if we take a Avalokiteshvara empowerment, we would get dinged on the head. We would probably get dinged on the heart, with some kind of implement, like some kind of image of the Buddha or something like that. They would tap you on the head. Then you may even rub something on your chest or something like that. It depends on the deity. But they give you the empowerment, and then you take the Samaya, and then after that you say Om Mani Padme Hum 100,000 times as your Samaya. Samaya is kind of a rule in this context, or maybe a promise, we could say. And so one visualizes oneself as the Samaya being, like Avalokiteshvara, Manjushri Mitra, Tara, Guru Padma Sambhava. You could be doing wrathful practices, Vajrakalaya, Mahakala, Ekajati. So there are many, many deities, obviously, that you can use as archetypes. And typically people will lean into a particular deity, just like they wear certain clothes. A certain deity will fancy them. They will fancy the deity too. And so it says, one visualizes oneself as Samaya being and visualizes the wisdom deity who is regarded as a friend in front of oneself. Okay, let me start that over. One visualizes oneself as the Samaya being and visualizes the wisdom deity who is regarded as a friend in front of oneself, and then practices the conceptual meditations on the syllable, mudra, and form of the deity, and the non-conceptual meditation on absolute bodhicitta by means of entering, remaining, and arising. So you can stay there, Yeshi. Typically, each deity has a seed syllable like Om or Hri, anything like that. And so those are utilized. Om Ah Hong, for example, is very popular in Dzogchen. Ah is the syllable that you see, for example, on our website. So the mudra, I don't know how much that's used anymore, but you could have a particular mudra associated with the Buddha family. And so this looks like a reference to Kirim and Dzogchen. You generate this visualization, and these visualizations, again, are very, very powerful because everything's pure consciousness. But we don't really see that. We overlay, we infer layers and layers of compounded weaving of conceptual reality. I always like to cite Donald Hoffman, where he says, after all this testing and experiments, we've concluded that the chances of natural selection reflecting the true nature of reality are virtually zero. that makes a lot of sense, that we would be manufacturing a proprietary reality to fulfill our desires, our physicality. So the idea here is that you've always had this giant playground of pure luminosity to create what you want, and you created something based on desires and confusion. And that's what happened. So when you start to visualize yourself and the world as a pure land, it's an archetypal mnemonic. It reminds you of the purity that's underneath. So then you would dissolve the visualization and just rest there in what they call Dzogchen, which is the same as Dzogchen. Now you're just pure abiding. Because you've used this visualization practice, it may be even better for you now. Well, I don't see this happening in many places anymore, but I imagine in Tibet it happened the way it was kind of intended. But now, because you've been visualizing your environment, your whole environment is part of your practice. But this doesn't happen with the so-called Western world. They've just taken it off the hinges for some reason, and it barely ever leads into Dzogchen or unionizes with Dzogchen in this respect. But here you see it. Rinpoche is saying it plainly as ever. The non-conceptual meditation on absolute bodhicitta. That's it. You enter into that, you remain into that. So the conduct here is the same as the Carya Tantra. And we have a video on that. Like and subscribe. Just kidding. Oh, man. So the results are, in the short term, one attains the common accomplishments, and ultimately one reaches the level of the Vajradhara of the 4 Buddha families, i.e. the 3 mentioned earlier, plus the Ratna family. Okay. Interesting how the Buddha families are going along with this. And then the vehicle of Yoga Tantra is the 6th yana. Are there any comments or questions so far? Anything going on? Okay. Let's see what the Yoga Tantra, Yoga Yana is about. The vehicle of Yoga Tantra is so called because it emphasizes the inner yogic meditation upon reality, combining skillful means and wisdom. Its entry point, view, meditation, conduct, and results are as follows. Entry point. Having been matured through the 11 empowerments, the 5 empowerments of the disciples, water, crown, vajra, bell, and name, as well as the 6 empowerments of the master, the empowerment of irreversibility, empowerment of seeing secret reality, authorization, prophecy, confirmation, and praising encouragement, one keeps the samayas as described in the particular texts. So prophecy is an interesting one. They say basically that when you become free of conditioned mind, the things that you see, you start to be able to see. For you, it's there, clear as ever. To other people, it would be prophecy because you're seeing the future, but you're really just seeing what's already here. So that's an interesting little nugget. The view, the ground, the way in which the view is established is as follows. Ultimately, all phenomena are realized to be clear light, beyond conceptual elaboration. Through the blessing of this, the relative is seen as the deities of the Vajradhatu. So basically a pure land. Dharmata, that's another. Looks like a synonym. Synonym. We caught that on recording, didn't we? Very good. So, yes, that's a synonym for Dharmadhatu. And then we have the meditation. One meditates on the yoga of skillful means, visualizing oneself as the deity by means of the 5 aspects of awakening and the 4 miraculous things, and summons the wisdom being, who then dissolves into oneself and is sealed by means of the 4 mudras, and so on. There's also the yoga of wisdom in which one rests in a state in which ultimate non-conceptual wisdom is inseparable from the relative appearance of the deity of the Vajradhatu. Yeah, and allegedly they could visualize so good that the person next to them could see the visualization as well. They could visualize so good that they could touch their visualizations. That's for me not hard to believe, but man, it would have been pretty good. Like, we're going to try that one day when we get our little meditation center. We're going to maybe sit together and see if we can all visualize something and see it. I mean, we could do this with thoughts and emotions and topics. I think it's possible that they did this, but apparently, as times are densifying, and they call it degenerate times, this is becoming less and less possible. And so that's why I figured, actually, why we keep Dzogchen bare bones in our group, because I don't think we're as good at the visualization practice anymore. People just aren't that good at it, or don't have time for it and things like that. But here it says there's also the yoga of wisdom, in which one rests in a state of which non-conceptual wisdom. Mm-hmm. So one of the main purposes for visualizing yourself as a deity and having a mantra associated with the deity and all this stuff is because typically we have a negative bias. Humans have that in their minds. And we don't even think positive thoughts or visualize a better life. And that's exactly why we stagnate sometimes, actually, because we don't allow ourselves to have a change. And sometimes it means radical shifts, discomfort, and we don't want that discomfort either. But typically with the negative bias, and you can research this, it's a psychological phenomenon. This is antithetical to the negative bias. It's asking you to visualize something good, something pure, something enlightened, something free. And so it's very powerful like that. When you visualize yourself as a deity, if you use it right, if you use the practice right, then, like, White Tara has been one of my deities all my life. If I rest here as White Tara, and let's say I've visualized her and her Pure Land and everything, and I say Om Dada Tu Dada Tu So Om Dada Tu Dada Tu So Om Dada Tu Dada Tu So, and then I end my sadhana with the dedication and everything, and then I let White Tara melt into me, and I rest as White Tara here now, boobies and everything. Yes, I know. I look like a dude, but I'm resting as a woman. It can happen. Garchin also had White Tara as a yidam. You can see it? Aw, that's sweet. So I'm resting as White Tara. I feel like White Tara now. Now I'm allowing enlightenment because I'm not Dawei, the unenlightened, dirty dog yogi guy. Okay? Even though you all know the dirty doggy yogi is awesome. I'm just citing this as an example. There is nothing wrong with the dirty doggy yogi, for the record. He can be enlightened too. See, Kukurepa. So, conduct. One practices ritual purification and cleanliness simply as a support. Results. As a worldly attainment, one becomes celestial Vidyadhara, and as the supermundane accomplishment, one attains enlightenment in Ganavahu, Ganavuha, that's the Pure Land, as one of the 5 Buddha families. In addition to the 4 families previously mentioned, there's also Amoka City's Buddha family of enlightened activity. Yeah, and this has to do with the 5 lights. It's almost like we're all from a certain planet. We kind of have a, and you can see this, right? There are people out there that are kind of more like you, or they, some people seem totally from a different world. I think it's possible. These are dimensions, psychic dimensions, essentially. That's the idea. So now we have all 5 Buddha families. And so next will be the 3 secret vehicles of powerful transformative methods. Okay, very good. So I think we'll stop there because a good place to stop. Victor says degenerate times requires a deeper and more direct teaching. Well, according to a lot of the teachings out there, Dzogchen, because it's very direct, is ideal for what they're calling degenerate times. Yeah. But people still want to prescribe 500,000 recitations and 100,000s of prostrations and years of Dharma patronage. I don't know what else to call it. Just being around the temples without getting Dzogchen. So that's what they sort of require in the institution itself. But these are ancient, archaic institutions. We just have a different context. And some people in the modern world with Dzogchen, they embrace that context. They say, you know what? It's a whole different world, a whole different crowd, a whole different teaching. Other people say, no, we're going to keep it just like it was prepped for the Tibetans and the Indians, the 8th century. We're going to present it like that. And a lot of us, like, I love history. I love all of the Dharma. So for me, that was great. I did Nundro. I did deity practices. To me, right now, there's basically a few options. You get down with a belief system, like a Judeo-Christian belief system, Islam, Judaism, whatever, and you just believe in God, and you end it there. No introspection. I mean, it tells you to be a good person, stuff like that, but it gives you very little as far as doing your mind science. So that's your choice. They've been wiping out science and philosophy for thousands of years. So your materials sort of Platonism is another option. So there you have the mainstream scientific community as your preachers, as your shamans. They're telling you what to think, what to believe. In many cases, you're not a professional in every scientific field. You can't validate this for yourself. You're just believing. And there's a mainstream scientific community. It's an actual group of people. For you to get a theory through there, it needs to have a consensus and everything. And that's basically what gets published out there, and people believe it, and it becomes a kind of a thought-based system, right? So you have that. I mean, of course, you would have complete, like, agnostic, like, I'm checking out. I don't believe in any of this. I don't care. I don't want to believe in anything. But through thousands of years, there's been materialism that has taken over. Get money, get spices, get silver, get gold. That has been the objective. And ever since the Germanic tribes got brainwashed into Christianity, there hasn't been like a scientific religion where you go do your science. It's been a mandated religion. When Rome fell, right? I'm taking it way back here, where the early Christians got kind of corrupted. And that was a Jewish movement anyway. So it's still going to be theistic, the Christian movement. And basically, many people did not have a choice. They had to be Christian. They could not go do yoga. But somewhere hidden, very obscure, if you study history, you'll see people barely talk about. India was pretty small. Tibet was pretty small little blip on the radar as far as history is concerned. But they just steady practiced the Dharma. There were people, while people were fighting these crazy battles and just chasing spices and silver and gold, there were these people chasing enlightenment. That's what you're a part of. For me, there's nothing more special than coming into this awakened mind. And you may not feel fulfilled at first because maybe you're used to getting sense pleasures. It may not feel like you're getting $1 million, but man, eventually you'll see its worth. It's priceless, what we're dealing with here. And it's different than Christianity or materialism. It's way different. So that's my my little speech Are there any final thoughts, comments, questions going on before we start to head out today? Yeah, go ahead.
Why are there different schools in Tibetan Buddhism instead of just using the 9 yanas?
Well, the schools came because the 9 yanas was it's so many. They would be on wood blocks, right? So in order for the Dharma to spread, what initially happened, it was spreading through the oral lineages. And so when people would travel and migrate and essentially settle somewhere, they would only have those blocks or that memorized. It would be one or two people who would have that many teachings memorized. So through that, the curriculum got lost and fragmented. So you have Pure Land Buddhism, you have Zen that popped up. Zen is a great example of Dzogchen popping up, or Chan, right, in China and Japan, but it just had a different look to it. And I think it was incomplete. It didn't have a lot of the scriptures with it, because after the great debate between Dzogchen and Zen that they had, I can't remember what year that was. Maybe somebody can help me. But after that, they basically took Zen and said, "We want everything butt naked. We want it bearing nothing on it," and that presented a problem, in my opinion, for a lot of people. So yeah, it spread out and lost its continuity, lost the whole. I don't know what you would call that, the whole package, right? The whole thing couldn't migrate, and then you had, the Mongols started taking everything over, and the Muslims were taking everything over, starting in the 600s. Oh, there we have it in the 8th century, the Samya debate. Thank you so much. So,
Uh,
yeah, it was a hectic time for the Dharma, always, in my opinion. Hard to
why
preserve.
do you think that it was a problem?
It was a problem.
Uh, you mentioned there was a problem with just teaching Dzogchen. Was it that?
Oh, well, yeah, because, there's no doubt. Historians say this, archaeologists say this. The kings were working in cohesion. The monarchies were working in cohesion back then. So everything, the wealthy aristocrats, the dynasties were friends. They hung out together. They traveled, to each other's palaces and things like that. So for a while, they would agree on stuff like, we can't have this practice that empowers the individual, right, and turns everybody into a Buddha, when the main thing was always the dynasties, the aristocrats need to be worshipped. That's why they made big paintings of themselves, glamorous giant paintings and gold and everything, even though underneath they're rotten to the core, but they tried to make you think that they're holy, that they're appointed by God. This has been a long time thing from the Romans and everything. So yeah, this whole idea of deifying leaders, I think for their social engineering, the Dharma, the true Dharma, Dzogchen, is just unacceptable, especially the yogic practices where they get a little crazy, right? So yeah, I think in a lot of senses, they didn't want the people to have it, and that's why the mystery schools all went underground too. They had this incredible power, and they hoarded it for themselves. Many people, or it just got erased. It got burnt down too. So that's why it's so precious. Starting in the 1950s, it started leaking out of the mountains of Tibet in these places, and it started to spread out into the world. Actually, there were secret places in China and Japan too. I think China is one of the last strongholds, perhaps Korea too, uh, where there is ancient Dzogchen untouched, hiding from persecution. It's a good question. They've been persecuting the Dharma for a very long time, particular aspects of the Dharma. They don't mind governmental Dharma. Yeah, it's an interesting. I love studying the Dharma because it's a peaceful history. It's a magical history. You study everything else, it's war. I mean, that book, the Bible, has not worked. They gave it 2,000 years. It hasn't worked. Let's try Dzogchen. Let's try the way of abiding. Let's try that book. I just feel like, dude, if the book is that powerful, it should be working after a couple hundred years at the very least. Your prescription is not working. But the Old and the New Testaments are very warlike, so that's what you get. If Donald Hoffman is right, if the Dharma is right, if we're all doing this with our minds, then look at what we're creating. We're creating the Bible, filled with war and slaves and oppression and gods being petty and jealous and stuff like that. And it's all based off Zoroastrianism anyway, copied, some of it plagiarized. So I don't know. To me, yeah, I guess this is my opinion. What else is being said here? Nice inquiry there, Thomas. It's ironic how the Tibetan genocide did more harm to the CCP. Yeah, it busted out, didn't it? And you have many people like Garchen Rinpoche he was locked up for 20 years and dent him. They just made him stronger. And that's what oppression tends to do. Okay, everybody. Well, fascinating conversation. I always love when I get to preach a little bit. These topics are dear to my heart. Your freedom, our freedom, is dear to my heart as a people. No colors, no boundaries, no countries. We can have our countries and everything, but this world has always been, a migratory world. It's been a diverse world for a very long time. So the question is: Do you think the object of ancient alchemists, both Eastern and Western, was the dissolution of the ego? Victor, I think there have been many flavors and dimensions of the Dharma. Some, like the old Egyptian kingdom, like what they had is incomprehensible to us. But I feel they were doing the same thing somehow. You can read about this in ancient Vedic and Dharma scriptures, how there are dimensions where beings just teach in different ways. And so I think that's what was happening there. They were teaching through symbols. So for example, the Freemasons, and full disclosure, I joined the Freemasons a long time ago, and my grandfather's a Freemason, my dad's a Freemason, but I opted out because I saw that it's doing the same exact thing, except it's highly corrupted and just they're not so into it like you all here. We're all into this practice so much. They should be into the practice like that in the lodges, but they're just not. And so it's a symbolic indication lineage, though. So they basically, at every degree, they show you symbols similar to what we find in Vajrayana. They also have symbolic indication lineages in Vajrayana. And so the idea is here that certain symbols talk to your consciousness. And what's happened is some of the mystery school symbology is leaked into movies and TV and things like that. So it's become quite interesting. Typically, it would be in architecture, and it's diversifying into algorithms. So anyway, I hope that makes sense, that they had this symbolic indication. Everybody good? The Masons get it from Egyptian rites. Yep. There was a symbol of the acacia tree. Yeah, that's why it's really fascinating. Animism, one of the first, considered the first religion. Dzogchen is kind of related because we start to see everything as a symbol. Yes, the schedule is on there. So we see everything, like you'll hear sounds, see sights, everything that's just talking to you as a co-emergence. That's where we're getting to here. outside of time, outside of cause and effect, into co-emergence. It's a fascinating place to be. You'll see constant symbology then. That's what Togya is introducing you to, deeper layers. So sorry if we don't have a good schedule up and accessible, but starting at 9 a.m. Eastern time on Saturday, our regular time, but that session will go for 2 hours. Then we'll have an hour break, and then we'll go for another 2 hours. Okay, both days like that. All right, my friends. Well, I think we'll close out here. Very powerful Dharma session as usual. Appreciate you so much. And it's pretty amazing how we have our little nodes all over the world. You guys are all over the place. You know, that's how they blow stuff up. They put the nodes everywhere. Okay, so we'll just have a moment of silence for the dedication. And deep bow to you, my friends. Have a beautiful day. To you.